All right, well, we are exactly 6 o'clock, so that's the perfect time. And now we're going to go into the first, I think, of several SaveMuni debates about initiatives that are or are likely to be on the November ballot. This one is on the Great Highway, and the way we've structured this is we have a proponent and an opponent, each of whom will be giving up to 10-minute presentations. And then we will open the floor to questions, first from SaveMuni members and then from other guests. And then at the very end, we will have 5 minutes for each side to wrap up the discussion. So we're going to start off this session with the proponent of the Great Highway Initiative, and that is Lucas Lux. Lucas is a resident of the Outer Sunset, and he is president of Friends of Great Highway Park, an organization that has put on events on the Great Highway. So it's off to you, Lucas, for up to 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you all so much for your time. Let me present some slides for you so you have something to look at. And give me one moment to work out Zoom to do that. Okay, and so can you confirm that you guys can see a slide that says Ocean Beach Park?
Yes, it's there.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Again, nice to meet everyone. Appreciate your time. I'm really excited to introduce you to a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to create a 2-mile-long oceanfront park by transforming a road to nowhere into a coastal promenade. Since 2020, the city's experimented with using a portion of the Great Highway as a coastal promenade, and the experiment, in our view, has been a huge success. The pilot promenade, by simply closing gates to cars, has become the city's third most visited park, receiving 3 million visits and counting. 10,000 people visit the promenade on an average weekend, and it has become a valued community space that hosts community parades, musicians, and the city's largest Halloween trick-or-treating event. This begs the question, what is next for our city's coastline? The pilot program will expire at the end of 2025. If nothing is done, the coast will revert to full-time use as a roadway. At the same time, the southern portion of the Great Highway is set to permanently close next year due to coastal erosion. This closure dramatically reduces the usefulness of the Great Highway as a commuter roadway and will require all of us to use new inland commute routes. The measure that we are proposing or supporting gives voters an opportunity to simultaneously solve for the new commute route on inland and create a world-class oceanfront park. A vote yes on the measure would convert the temporary part-time park into a full-time oceanfront promenade, similar to JFK Promenade and Golden Gate Park, but with an ocean. The measure affects only the Upper Great Highway from Lincoln Way to Sloat Boulevard. The Great Highway north of Lincoln Way is unaffected, allowing continued connection between the Richmond and the Sunset neighborhoods, as well as coastal views and access by automobile to that section. The success of the pilot demonstrated that San Franciscans want to recreate by the coast in ways that are not possible on the beach itself. Whether it's jogging, roller skating, pushing a stroller, the pilot has enabled San Franciscans to enjoy the coast in new ways. The park promenade also makes enjoying the coast accessible to more types of people. For people unable to walk through sand because they use a wheelchair or have limited mobility, options to enjoy the coast before the promenade are severely limited. Similarly, people who work on weekends are unable to enjoy a weekend-only park. In short, a promenade opens the coast for everyone to enjoy, regardless of whether you can walk in the sand or what your work schedule looks like. Making the space a full-time park will enable basic improvements like adding seating with ocean views, drawing even more people to enjoy the coast. It's also an important first step towards longer-term possibilities to reimagine how we use our very finite coastal space. And of course, bringing people to the coastal park also means bringing more customers to nearby businesses who stand to benefit from the thousands of new customers at their doorstep each day who are coming out to a new attraction that wasn't there before. Removing private vehicles will also remove runoff pollution from our sensitive coastal ecosystem. As you likely know, runoff pollution from sources like tires and brakes is the top source of ocean pollution and is very harmful to wildlife in a coastal ecosystem. San Francisco has taken bold steps to reimagine its waterfront in other parts of the city, from removing the Embarcadero Freeway to converting Crissy Field into a park. Until now, our oceanfront has been left behind. And we have an incredible opportunity to change that and give a gift to future generations of a world-class oceanfront park open to everybody. So with all these benefits, what do voters have to give up to have an oceanfront park? Fortunately, not a lot. They just have to turn inland one street earlier. West Side drivers have relied on the Great Highway to get in and out of San Francisco because it connects directly to Daly City. The closure of the southern portion of the roadway changes that. The Great Highway from Sloat to Skyline has already been legislated to permanently close due to coastal erosion. The closure is expected to be fully implemented next year, after which we'll all have to divert inland when we're driving south to new routes in and out of the city. There are two possible diversions. We can divert by Lincoln Way or by Sloat Boulevard. They are the same distance and get you to the same place. Sunset Boulevard, a nearby 6-lane arterial, which connects drivers to either I-280 or Skyline Drive. The diversions are the same distance and, according to the MTA, take nearly the same amount of time. The MTA studied the impact of the pilot project and reported that the most impacted trips are between, predictably, outer Richmond and Daly City or further south. And for those trips, some of those during rush hour may increase by 3 minutes. Other trips are not impacted in a statistically significant way. If we have to divert the same distance inland anyway, the question is a rush hour impact of 3 minutes for certain subset of trips worth it? The city faced a similar choice with the removal of the Embarcadero Freeway, which traded some convenience in exchange for opening up the Bayside waterfront to people. We think the answer here is the same. Opening up our finite oceanfront land as a park is worth this trade-off. But city leaders are not stopping there. Traffic infrastructure improvements are in progress that will reduce the trade-off even more. And these improvements will actually save taxpayers money. A coastal roadway is very expensive to maintain. The city spends $1.7 million annually to clear sand from the roadway. And still, the roadway closes up to 65 days per year due to sand accumulation. Also, signal lights deteriorate quickly in the salt air. The current signals are past their lifespan and need replacement. The city controller's office has estimated that this measure would save taxpayers over $4 million in capital costs, in addition to up to $500,000 annually from reduced sand clearance if all lanes don't need to be fully cleared for car traffic at all times. Finally, smoothing the route via Lincoln Way can address the perception that nearby neighborhood streets are adversely impacted by using the Great Highway as a park. According to the MTA, traffic on neighboring streets remains significantly below pre-pandemic levels, even when the Great Highway is used as a park space. Further, traffic calming measures on the lower Great Highway have succeeded in reducing the average speeds on that street, which had been above 30 miles per hour prior to the park pilot. So the data doesn't demonstrate that a neighborhood traffic problem exists, but if we can create a smoother route for through traffic on Lincoln Way, we can help address the neighborhood concerns about potential cut-through traffic. So in closing, tearing down the Embarcadero did not come without some trade-offs or without some controversy, but the decision has left an enduring positive legacy on the city. Few people would go back on that decision. And now today we have an incredible opportunity to similarly transform our city's oceanfront for future generations. And thanks to Mother Nature's reclamation of the southern part of the roadway, all we have to do to open up the coast for people is to turn inland one street earlier. And with that, that is all I had, and I appreciate all of your time and attention.
Thank you, Lucas. For the opposition to this proposed initiative, we have Patricia Arak. Patricia lives on Lower Great Highway. She's a retired English teacher, and she organized a group called the Concerned Residents of the Sunset to fight the full closure of the Great Highway. Patricia, the floor is yours for up to 10 minutes. You can unmute. Patricia?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've lived on the Lower Great Highway for 39 years. And first up front, I'd like to say it makes me happy to see people up on the Upper Great Highway on the weekends. I know what a special place this is, and I fully agree that it should be used for recreation part of the time. However, Joel Engardio with other supervisors, Great Highway Park, and the Bike Coalition blindsided the tax-paying residents of D4 and D1 with this shocking ballot initiative to close down the highway without any input from those who will be negatively affected by such an action. This end run around the original pilot is undemocratic, inequitable, and unfair, and should be removed from the ballot. Joel et al. Have acted with the assumption the taxpayers and residents most affected have no right to engage in a discussion about the future of the Great Highway, and no discussion about a compromise. I'd like to go over several points. First, I want to talk about the actual language of this new ordinance that uses the original pilot and has added this language in section 2A. It adds, without evidence, the Upper Great Highway is not needed for vehicular traffic. The surrounding streets will be sufficient for displaced traffic. Who believes that it is not needed for vehicles? Certainly not the thousands of working people who rely on this highway for work, and thousands of residents who will have to suffer the dire consequences of permanent closure. Special interest groups like to quote the outcome of Prop I. This was a flawed proposition that muddled the effect of closures between three different locations: Golden Gate Park, the Great Highway Extension, and the Upper Great Highway. And it proved nothing about the actual choice of voters about the Upper Great Highway between Lincoln and Sloat. Section 2C2 says, and has removed the language that says that SFMTA and RPD will publicly report on data, and there will be a discussion about the data collection. That has been removed. It's no longer required. There's been no review of emissions, no review of snowy plover effects, only bloated numbers of walkers and bikers based on highly suspect echo counters on the Upper Great Highway that can count one person up to 4 times in one visit. The actual count is probably about half or less of the published numbers. Those who live on the Lower Great Highway see the cars and peoples every day. The well-kept secret is that the highway is closed on days. On closed days is actually sparsely used. And even on good weather days, in spite of what the data suggests. Rick, could you put up that first drone photo if you can, please? We need third-party data that actually reflects the true use of the Upper Great Highway. And section 2C4 is the absolute kicker. Okay, so this is a drone photo. This was taken on a Friday afternoon, June 21st, I think, of this year. You can see how busy that highway is. It's completely empty. Section 2C4 is the most egregious deletion of all. Gone from the original pilot is this protection for residents. RPD and SFMTA shall engage in community outreach during the pilot program to gain public input on the effectiveness of this program. We are robbed of our right as the population most negatively affected by this closure to have any engagement whatsoever. This crude destruction of our rights to speak exposes the selfish and arrogant aims of those who would force their tyranny on us. We have no voice in the decision that ignores the plight of residents whose safety, health, and well-being will be destroyed by permanent closure. Also, this ballot ignores a compromise. This initiative completely ignores the possibility of a compromise, which a significant portion of D4 and D1 would support. Joel Ingardio repeatedly insults our intelligence by claiming the proposed ballot measure will give us a voice in the decision. We can vote no, he says, but he knows that the citywide majority will vote yes. The desecration of our neighborhood is not their problem. If he really cared about all of his constituents, he would withdraw this ballot measure, support completing the pilot project as written, and support a new ballot measure in 2026 that would include a compromise, either Supervisor Chan's proposal or a weekend closure proposal. A weekend closure compromise means that bikers and walkers continue to have access, including the holiday and special event. A permanent closure would result in the highway sitting empty 75 to 90% of the time. The high injury networks, 19th, Sunset, Lincoln, Chain of Lakes, they would be choked with heavy traffic and suffocating auto exhaust pollution. The weather in this area is cold, windy, cloudy, foggy, and damp. The sand blows constantly. I don't know what they're going to do when they close this and have this as a park. The sand is not going to stop blowing. We who live on the lower grade highway believe our own eyes, and often the highway sits empty of walkers and bikers. A permanent weekend closure compromise is enough and equitable for all. A compromise will calm the public outrage that is destroying our community. A compromise will be fair. There's no police enforcement. Those who live out here saw the consequences of full closure in 2020 and 2021. Violent assaults, drunkenness, human excrement in driveways, including my own driveway, and other antisocial behaviors increased dramatically, and the police did nothing because they don't have the manpower. The cars during the week have a mitigating effect on bad behavior and desecration of the dunes, and when eliminated, there will be no police or park police to stop people from trashing the highway and dunes and setting up camps everywhere. Joel talks about joy. There's not going to be a lot of joy out here when we have irresponsible visitors leaving garbage, trash, and excrement everywhere and setting up illegal campsites. Even now, the residents are experiencing harm from homeless, drug users, and criminal activity. I can get to that later. It'll only get worse. The people that want to close this highway ignore these realities. There's no funding, no mention of funding. Sections 5 and 6 of this proposed ordinance will close the highway within 180 days. If the Section 5 approvals are granted, since there are no funds, the highway will sit empty for the majority of the time, covered in sand for an unknown number of months or years. Full closure is bad for the environment, not good. Everybody says it's going to be good. It's not going to be good. It's going to be a disaster for Sunset dwellers who will have a huge increase in air pollution from auto exhaust from diverted vehicles. Vehicle miles traveled will increase, stop and start driving in the avenues will increase. The dunes will continue to be desecrated by careless visitors who run, slide, ride, bike, and bring dogs onto the fragile dunes. The bird sanctuary will continue to be harmed. Much of the vegetation on or near the upper grade highway is already destroyed. The exhaust from The vehicles on Chain of Lakes will increasingly harm the vegetation in Golden Gate Park. Trash, needles, excrement, the discarded food will be everywhere. Animals will be harmed. The serene, unspoiled natural beauty of this place will be lost when Recon Park brings in smelly, noisy food trucks and inappropriate, quote, improvements. How am I doing on time?
Looks like you have 2 minutes more, Patricia.
Okay. Let's see. Rick, would you put up that map? According to NOAA, climate scientists, a sea level rise of 10 feet will not even reach the highway, while the north and east coast of San Francisco will be inundated with massive floods. To put this into perspective, NOAA scientists predict the sea level rise will be 13 inches by 2050 in total. Closing the upper grade highway will increase harm to the environment, not reduce it. So take a look at this map. You can see what's going to be flooded. And then if you look on the west coast of San Francisco, there's a huge contrast to what it's going to be on the north side, the marina, and then the financial district and Mission Bay and so forth. So for this reasons, the best way forward and what's fair and equitable to the people who are going to suffer the consequences of this closure is to withdraw this unfair ballot initiative and let's see, and include all of his constituents, sorry about that, for a compromise. We want this ballot gone, and we want to be able to have a compromise, have a discussion and a vote on that. Now is the time to withdraw this flawed initiative from the ballot, return to the original pilot, and plan for the inclusion of all stakeholders in a decision that is a compromise. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. All right, now we're into the question period. I would appreciate if you'd limit your question or comment to no more than a minute so that we could get answers from both sides and also get in as many questions as we can. Okay, open first to SaveMuni members. Who wants to go first? Oh, everybody's shy tonight.
Glenn.
Okay, wait a second. Wait a second. I see.
I'm a member.
Okay.
Don't you remember? I gave you $20.
Yeah, Glenn. Okay, Glenn, you're
Please
first, and
recommend
then
everybody raise their hand.
yeah, please raise your hand. I see Glenn. I see Richard Rothman. You two are go ahead.
So I just want to make the comment that the area between Sloat and where the sewer plant is, that area is not actually being damaged by coastal erosion. It's being eroded by poor maintenance. There's numerous pipes that are broken there. There's water that has come down from the highway itself and caused erosion. There is almost no erosion from the coast there. And all of the erosion is actually from bad maintenance from the highway. Thank you for letting me make that comment.
Okay.
I have pictures if you'd like to see them, by the way.
Okay, fine. We'll take that as a comment, Glenn, not a question. Richard, you're next.
Okay, I'm gonna talk fast because I got a lot to say. I live in the outer Richmond. Nobody talked to the Richmond district residents about this. On Nextdoor, everybody's against this proposal. Everybody on Nextdoor. And the National Park Service has concerns about this. On the dunes, the chain of lakes, nobody talks about the chain of lakes and the impact in Golden Gate Park on Friday afternoon when it's closed. Nobody's talked about the commuter traffic of the VA hospital when the traffic is heavy on Friday, and if it's closed all the time. The chain of lakes and the west end of the park is going to be a parking lot. And the 18 bus, why not expand? You haven't talked about the 18 bus of why not expanding the service there to make it an express bus there. So you haven't done, this needs to be withdrawn and needs to be talked about there. And there's no money for lights on Lincoln. It took on 43rd and full. It took 10 years to put stop signs in. This is a flawed proposal, and Supervisor Nguardio was on at the Board of Supervisors today. He only talked about the sunset. He didn't talk about the impact on the Richmond District residents. So you people, I want to hear your answer about the impact of the Richmond District residents and why you didn't reach out to the Richmond District residents first, or at least talk to them and have a community meeting about it, because we're impacted the most by this.
Okay, that's good. I take it that was directed to Lucas, so
That's right.
yes, go ahead.
So I got to sort out which part of that was the question, but I think the question was about the impact on Richmond residents, and the impact really comes from the closure of the southern portion of the Great Highway, where so my wife used to live in the outer Richmond, and back then we would use the Great Highway to get down to Daly City or Pacifica, down right, and so it was a direct connection, and so I understand that. And it's a beautiful drive, right? So I understand the appeal that as an outer Richmond resident, that is a way for you to get down south of the city more quickly. The reality is that it's changing. So if you go back to a 2012 report by Spur, that portion of the coast has been an erosion hotspot for decades. And that portion, for that reason, is closing permanently to allow for what is called a managed retreat, which means removing some of the hard infrastructure that contributes to erosion, like roadways, seawalls, things like that. And the goal is to do a managed retreat, bring that infrastructure further from the beach to save that portion of the coast long term. So the impact for a driver is you can no longer use the Great Highway to connect from Great Highway directly to Daly City or further south. That is happening whether this measure wins or loses. And so the impact then for you is, if I have to drive inland, do I drive inland on Lincoln or do I drive inland on Sloat? The distance is the same. Your vehicle miles traveled are the same. The difference is just one street or the next street, because there's no other outlet. And so we've spoken with many residents from the Richmond. People on our board are also from the Richmond. So we certainly hear that voice. But we think that the trade-off of turning one street earlier at Lincoln in exchange for everybody gets a park makes sense. And I want to respond to a couple other things you bring up in terms of the funding for the lights on Lincoln, that kind of thing. If this measure did not exist, you would have the same problem. The southern portion of the roadway is closing. And so are you going to make improvements on Lincoln, or are you going to make improvements on Sloat to adjust the traffic patterns to this new reality? And if we do that on Lincoln, again, you get a park. And by not using that portion of the Great Highway as a roadway, you save over $4 million in capital costs, and you can take that and put that into the improvements on Lincoln. And so this is a financially net positive move for the city, even with the improvements on Lincoln.
Okay, that's let's Patricia, do you want to make a comment on that, or should we move on?
Yes, well, I have.
Herb, just a moment. Patricia, do you want to make a comment?
Since I don't live in the Richmond, I would rather not make a comment, but I do have more comments that I want to make later on.
Okay, fine. Next, let's see. We're going to SaveMuni members first. Tom, and then Howard Wong.
What about, I'm next.
No, I'll put you in the queue, Herb, and have you after Howard, okay?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Tom?
Thank you. Okay. I'm in the transportation business. I took a look at the plan, and in my opinion, the impact on drivers and driving is going to be far, far more than 3 minutes. and it already has been. All of the north-south roads on the west side are overloaded. And what will happen is, as the first one gets overloaded, part of the load that was formerly on that moves next east, then next east. But once you get to 19th Street, there's really no place else to go. 3 minutes, I think, is laughable. I think 30 minutes is going to be good in a lot of cases. I just do not see how this can possibly work. The other problem, of course, is that we are likely to see the shutdown of traffic on the Great Highway occur right on time, but the improvements to the roads that will be taking up that load are going to be delayed for years or decades, as we have seen always happening in San Francisco. Thank you.
Was that a question directed to anybody, Tom, or was that just a statement?
That was a statement. If anybody wants to respond, be my guest.
Okay, Lucas, do you have a response you'd like to make?
Yeah, and so the trip from outer Richmond to Daly City doesn't take 30 minutes. It takes around 20. So it's not going to be a 30-minute impact. We can all know that. But I think like
No,
rather
I'm
than
saying it
rely
will
on
increase by that much due to congestion.
Yeah, no, I hear you that you're saying the trip will increase by 30 minutes. And that's why I think we need to look to the data from our professionals in the city to measure the impact. And so that's where they are saying the impact is 3 minutes. They have real-time opportunities to study that because the road is closed so frequently due to sand. And so that can be real-time data coming from them. And then the one other thing you bring up is the traffic load on the streets. And again, this is something very easy for the MTA to measure, is how much traffic is going on each street. And they've done that. Traffic on Great Highway itself, relative to pre-pandemic, meaning before we had a park, traffic is down 38% relative to pre-pandemic. Traffic on Lower Great Highway is cut in half since pre-pandemic. And then traffic on Sunset Boulevard is down 30% relative to pre-pandemic. And then that story continues on all the outer avenues where traffic is significantly below pre-pandemic levels today. And so the impact means if you are concerned about traffic impacts of the park, today you have a park on weekends, and even on weekends, you have much less traffic than you did before you ever had the park.
Okay, Patricia, any comment?
Yes. Even if it is 30% less, that means there is between 14,000 and 15,000 cars still on the that were on the Upper Great Highway that have been diverted to the Lower Great Highway and other streets. Lincoln and Sunset and 19th are already crowded. They're already difficult. You add 15,000 cars a day to those high vision zero injury streets. It's just going to be much worse. I counted cars one Friday afternoon around 4 o'clock. Between 4 and 5 o'clock, I counted 700 cars going north and south in front of my house. None of them stopped at the stop sign. I've got a stop sign in front of my house. Nobody stops at the stop sign. 700 cars. So I don't trust the data of SFMTA. We know that SFMTA and RPD have colluded with the Bike Coalition, at least since 2020. We have emails where they colluded together to skew the results of a survey about who wants the Great Highway closed. I do not accept any data from SFMTA because they are not a disinterested third party.
Okay,
And
I'll let it go at that. Howard, you're next, and then Herb, and then Jean, and then Paul.
As an architect and planner, I always caution on not creating master plans for a vision. So here we seem to be moving forward with kind of a very vague plan. It seems that one should be able to definitely have enough programmatic data by using trial programs and pilot programs and phasing, when there's a potential compromise phased plan, seems like that's a logical thing to do rather than to rush towards any particular one direction, and design, one should be open to a lot of options rather than, moving towards one idea too quickly. And in the past, things haven't always turned out the way people thought. So I would say, do some trial programs, phase the project. Thanks.
Okay, I
And
take that as a
if-
comment. Lucas, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would just flag that we're 4.5 years into two different types of pilots of this. We had a full-time pilot during the pandemic, and we had a part-time pilot since August of 2022, or 2021, sorry. And all of this data that we've referred to comes from those pilots. And the other piece of data that we can point to is JFK Promenade, which was essentially the same legislation in a different place, and visitorship increased by 36% when that was transformed into a promenade without adding any additional funding requirements for Rec Park.
Okay, Patricia, anything on that one?
no,
Good, okay. Herb, that's you. Herb?
Yeah. My concern is, won't there be increased congestion on streets like Sunset Boulevard? And to me, it's the whole logic of converting highways, boulevards into recreational areas. If you are really committed to doing this, why don't you consider 19th Avenue as a recreational area? It's more miles than the Great Highway, and maybe more people would be in the streets. I I really question the logic of converting boulevards and streets into recreational areas. Why not do it in people's apartments then? Why not do it in the rotunda of City Hall? The logic seems to be flawed.
Okay,
And
I-
so the rhetorical question aside, 19th Avenue doesn't have the ocean, right? And so the ocean is a very special place. It's one of the most beautiful places in the city. And that's why people come out to it in droves when it's open as a promenade. And so this isn't like we have 1,200 miles of roadway in the city. We have 2 miles of flat oceanfront. And so that's why the focus is on that space.
okay. I don't know if Herb talked about 19th Avenue facetiously, but in any event, Jean, Jean, you're next, and then Paul, and then
Thank you.
Paula.
Thanks for the presentations. I certainly hope SaveMuni has a robust discussion about this after all this discussion with the proponent and the opponent, and takes a position against this ballot initiative. That's the first thing I want to say. And there have been a lot of comments that I completely agree with from the opponents of the project. So thank you very much. But there's one thing that I'd like to ask Lucas about, and that is the comparison of the Great Highway to the Embarcadero. And you keep throwing up these photographs of the Embarcadero before and after it came down. And you're saying we should turn the Great Highway into the Embarcadero. You know what? I agree with you. The Embarcadero is a 4-lane road with bike lanes, with pedestrian walkways. That is what the opponents of this project are looking for during the week. If you want it to look like the Embarcadero, we're with you. And I'm very disappointed that that everybody, you and Supervisor Engardio and other people say, hey, look how great the Embarcadero was once the freeway came down. we're for it. But you've got to be honest about saying that that remains a 4-lane road, as well as a pedestrian walkway and bike lanes. And it's perfectly possible for the Great Highway to remain a 4-lane road during the week, as well as improve it so that it could be perhaps more easily accommodating bike riders and other people using rollers, which is now the new term, I guess, as well as pedestrians. And it's a win-win for everyone. And you get your Embarcadero on the west side of San Francisco. Thank you.
Okay, all right, Lucas, I guess that's you again.
Yeah, and so the Embarcadero was an incredible transformation for the city that I think it went through 4 ballot measures. And it was a very controversial decision in the city. But we traded some incremental convenience in exchange for opening up our waterfront in a way that it was not open before. And that's why we're making the comparison here, because today, if you live in the Sunset, you know that the beach is, I live a couple of blocks from the beach, but you're cut off from that because there's a 4-lane roadway that you have to like basically jump across now that the tunnels aren't there anymore to access the beach. And what we experienced through the pilot programs of Great Highway as a park is that opens up the coast to people in ways that were not possible to enjoy the coast before. And so that's why we reference that transformation, because we have a similar opportunity on the west side. But I want to clarify one thing that you allude to is why not have a roadway next to a park? And I'm not sure whether that was Supervisor Chan's proposal to literally split the road, half roadway, half park.
I'm saying, excuse me,
so-
Lucas, I'm suggesting that you keep it the way the Embarcadero works. 4 lanes of traffic, 2 in each direction, with paths for bicycles and sidewalks. That's the western version of the eastern coastline of San Francisco. That's my suggestion.
Yeah,
I'm not opposing,
got it.
I'm not taking a position on Connie Chan's. I'm talking about if you want the Embarcadero in front of the Great Highway, let's go for it. Because it would maintain the 4 lanes of traffic as well as bike lanes and pedestrian walkways. And hey, thank you for suggesting it.
Yeah, and so here we have a slightly different scenario where the southern part of the road that makes the road so useful is going away, right? Whether this measure wins or loses. And so you have to divert inland the exact same mileage. And so you're traveling the same distance, and you've got this opportunity of what do you do with this space? And does the roadway solve your problems? Because the problems that we're talking about are park enjoyment and coastal access. And the second problem that we're talking about is traffic. And the Great Highway is really expensive, closes all the time because of sand. And you're not going to change that. And so what you could do is actually solve the problem of traffic by improving the flow by Lincoln and Sunset. You never have sand closures, you save money, and in exchange, everybody has an oceanfront park. And so there's an opportunity to actually solve both problems in a way that is a win-win.
Okay, let's see, Paul, you were next.
May I respond?
Oh, excuse me, Patricia, you want to comment on that?
Yeah.
more.
First, the elevated freeway, the Central Freeway, you cannot compare that to the Great Highway. That elevated freeway was an eyesore. It was horrible. It should go, and it went, and I'm grateful for that. This highway is perfect as it is because it is not developed. It is like leaving San Francisco without having to leave San Francisco. People are still going to use the Great Highway even if the extension is closed. So I can't agree with you, Lucas, that it's going to be a dead space for cars. People are still going to use it because it is a faster route to the Richmond.
Okay, Paul,
Hey,
did you have?
Bob, before you go on,
Yeah.
Can we ask people that have already spoken to take their hands down? Because
Yes.
Paul
yes.
is like number 7. There's Peter, Shawana,
Well, no,
me, Paula.
Rick, these are, those folks are non-members, and I've been skipping over them to allow our members to make their comments. Then if there is time, I will come back to those folks who are guests. So,
Yeah, I think I'm a member.
yeah. Yes, you are. Yeah. But Paul is next, and then Paula and Rick, if you want to make a comment, you're after them.
Okay.
Okay, sorry for having dropped off, but I think I had my turn to speak. We had a power outage here in the Arizona desert. So anyway, I have two questions, if I may, Bob.
Yeah.
Okay, the first is the highway improvements needed on the alternative streets that you desire traffic to move to. Can your measure require that all improvements must be made before the Great Highway is closed?
So the short answer to that is the measure does not include like prescriptive traffic improvements, because the preference is for the agencies like the MTA to be able to adapt to traffic changes over time. That's the first part of the answer to your question. The second part is a timing question of when are these improvements being made, and there's basically a different timeline for each improvement. So take, for example, 41st and Lincoln. I'm sure you're all familiar with that being a hectic intersection. Back in Supervisor Marr's days in the Sunset, he already implemented a new traffic signal coming there. So that's coming very soon. So that's likely to be in the ground next year. Similarly, there's another traffic signal coming to Skyline and Great Highway that should be in the ground next year. Similarly, one of the improvements is there's a relatively new stop sign on 46th Avenue that was added within the past couple of years. That will be removed, and that's easy to do. There are a couple improvements that will take a little bit longer, like a new signal at La Playa and Great Highway, and a new signal at 45th La Playa and Lincoln, and 45th and Lincoln, where the playground is. So those will take a little bit longer. They're in process. And so then that comes back to your timing question of like, when is everything going to happen? If this measure wins in November, then the city still has to go to the Coastal Commission and get a Coastal Commission permit. And so that will take time. The amount of time that it takes, I can't tell you, but it could be a year, it could be less. And during that time, the city would accelerate any of these improvements if the measure wins. And so it's not an exact calendar response to your question, but I hope that's helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, one more question.
May I make a comment?
Well, yeah, Paul, if it's a real quick one, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good question. Patricia wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, Patricia, go ahead.
The proposal as written says that this is going to be accomplished in 180 days, 6 months, as long as the approvals are granted. I think that highway will be closed permanently by April, if not sooner. Also, the Upper Great Highway is the safest street in the Sunset. I know this because I don't walk now, but when I could, I was up there a lot, and the safest crosswalk I've ever been on was the Upper Great Highway crosswalk, because the traffic, because of the lights, the traffic is one long block to the north and one long block to the south. It's absolutely the safest crosswalk I've ever been on. And there are lights that tell you when you can walk and when you are supposed to stop. So, the fact that this is not a, it's unsafe for people. It's more dangerous when the bike riders are up there who yell at people to get out of the way. I'm disabled. I'm afraid to go up there. And furthermore, there's no disabled access. There is Judah and Taravel, but these two are not, they're not ADA compliant. There's 10 blocks with no disabled access whatsoever. Recon Park has had 4 years, nobody's done anything so that disabled people can get up there. I have a friend who's in a wheelchair. She has MS. She says she can't get up there. And I know the propaganda that, you know, proponents of a park put out there, oh, it's safe for wheelchair people. And I've seen one person with a walker, a man at 9 o'clock in the morning with a walker. I can't get up there. There's no disabled access. And once you do get up there, it's very dangerous because these bike riders are egomaniacs, they're entitled, and they're yelling at people to get out of the way.
Okay, now, we're coming up, toward the close of
Bob,
yeah, Paul.
I asked specifically if I could ask 2 questions.
Yeah, go
You
ahead.
said yes, at least I
Yeah,
come
go
with
ahead.
questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, Lucas, has a study been done? Well, first let me preface this by saying, you say the Great Highway is regularly closed because of sand intrusion, and that the city has to come and remove that sand. Now, when
Sorry,
the Great
one
Highway-
second. Let me make sure my kid's okay. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
May I,
think
well,
the-
he's gone. May I just say one thing?
Yeah,
Uh,
is this Patricia?
Yeah, the sand isn't going to stop blowing.
I know that. That's my question. So let me ask it, Patricia. When he
Okay.
comes back.
So-
Okay, Lucas is
And
back.
sorry about that, Paul. We had
No,
a big
that's
fall.
no
but we're
problem.
okay.
That's
Kids
okay.
are great. Kids are great. Kids are optimism about the future. And so good for you. We know that Great Highway is closed regularly for sand intrusion. The city removes that sand and relocates it probably to the beach. When this becomes a park, has there been a study of sand intrusion into the Richmond and people's homes and people's streets and people's sidewalks? You look at the where I lost it. The Palisades Del Rey area of Los Angeles, which is right below the runways for LAX, and how that area has become, going from a neighborhood when they took the houses away to sand dunes. So I have concerns about what's going to happen. So has there been a study done regarding sand intrusion into the actual neighborhood and the expense of cleaning that up and reimbursing people whose houses are being sandblasted by
Yeah. Okay,
approaching dune?
yeah. Lucas?
So there have been multiple relevant studies on the question, but the premise of your question is that sand removal would no longer happen, and that's where the sort of reality hits, that if this becomes a promenade, you still do need to remove sand, and that will continue until the dunes are restored. And so where this goes is Rec Park and the controller's office have predicted that if this is a promenade rather than a roadway, sand clearance still occurs, but the city saves somewhere between $150,000 and $500,000 a year to do less sand clearance, because you don't need to be out there as frequently to have 4 lanes of a roadway completely clear, which is what's required to have a safe roadway.
Okay,
Thank
that's
you
good.
very much. Appreciate
Okay.
the answer.
Rick, I'm going to give you the last question and then we're going to get to wrap up.
Wait, I was before Rick. I'll go after him, but you had called on
Who-
me. Paula.
Who did I? Oh my God. Yes. I'm sorry, Paula. Yeah. Yes. You're before Rick. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I want to dispute a statement that was made that everyone or the large majority of people on Nextdoor oppose closing the great highways to car. There is a lot of discussion, and at least as many, if not more, of the people who write in on post on nextdoor.com want the great highway closed to cars and the park open. And there are a number of people who live on the lower great highway who agree with that position and have spoken at meetings and on Nextdoor. I actually think it would be wonderful to have a park there. Once the great highway is closed 24/7 and it becomes known that that's a park, you're going to have San Francisco residents making plans to go out there during the week at night, or if they have a day off during the week. And you're going to have visitors from not just the Bay Area, but around the United States and around the world, when they come to San Francisco, that's going to be something they want to do, because a park where the ocean is just going to be absolutely wonderful. And they're going to go there during the day for sunset. Hopefully we'll have the pandas. They'll visit the pandas at the zoo and then walk on the Great Highway Park. And I just think it's going to be wonderful. It's going to bring business with the right campaigns. It's going to bring business to the local merchants in the Richmond and the Sunset, the outer Sunset. We're a neglected part of town. I don't know how many of you live out here, but we're neglected by the city, by the things they do and support. And this will greatly support the merchants. And Lucas, I thought that in addition to trying to get some lights instead of stop signs on Lincoln to speed up the drive from the Great Highway to Sunset on Lincoln, isn't there going to be a little work done to try and speed Sunset up once all this construction is done? Something about timing the lights and moving the buses to the far side, so if you're trying to make a right-hand turn on Sunset, at least you won't have to wait behind the bus.
Yeah, and so the SFMT is looking into that. The challenge with Sunset Boulevard is the width makes it difficult to time all of the lights and give pedestrians enough time to get across in time. And as you know, there are lots of schools right next to Sunset Boulevard. And so that's the problem they're trying to solve. And they're looking at creative solutions to tackle that. But that is certainly one of the priorities for Supervisor Engardio.
Okay, thank you. Rick, you get the last question, and then we're going to move to wrap up.
First comment, 3 minutes versus 30 minutes. Do you believe SFMTA? I don't believe them. They're a biased organization. And the whole thing about closing the southern part of the roadway, it's going away anyway. That comes from a Spur report, and they are not unbiased either. So I guess my basic question is I initially was going to say, has the Coastal Commission approved this plan? But you clarified they'll go to the Coastal Commission. But has the Coastal Commission been consulted or involved or informed of either of these two things? This retreat plan and closing the part of the roadway going away, and the retreat plan, and nor this proposed measure.
Yeah, and so let's take those in two bite-sized chunks. First, let's talk about south of Sloat. The Coastal Commission is reviewing the design proposal by the PUC, who's the lead agency for that project. The PUC requested a stay, or basically a delay of that hearing until later this year. And so then the Coastal Commission will vote on whether they approve the design of that. The Coastal Commission already, basically their position is that roadway needs to close, but we have concerns with the type of seawall and where the seawall, the position of the seawall as well. And so that's the Coastal Commission purview on the South of Sloat project. I do want to add that it's not just a Spur report that is close to that. The supervisors of San Francisco already legislated that permanent closure because it's the consensus that that is an erosion hotspot and that some sort of project needs to happen. And so that's the southern portion. Then when we go to what the Coastal Commission has said on the park portion that we're talking about, there was an appeal to the pilot program that went all the way to the Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission voted unanimously to uphold the pilot and rejected all of the arguments against it.
Okay, now I'm going to call, unfortunately, we are not able to get to any of the guests because our SaveMuni members have been so eager to make questions here. So I apologize for that, but thank you all very much for coming. We're going to move to wrap up, and I'm going to shorten it a little bit. So 2 minutes each on the wrap up. And the first wrap up goes to the opponent, and that's you, Patricia, for 2 minutes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just want to repeat in a perfect world that Paula described, it would be great. But in the real world, we're going to have increased traffic. We're going to have an influx of homeless people and bad actors, like we did when it was closed before. The weather is not going to change. It is cold. It is windy. It's cloudy, foggy. Today's a nice day, but most of the time, the weather is not great. So we know that people are not coming out here on the days that it's closed. We see with our own eyes. So we need to have a compromise. And the people that are going to have to deal with this, all these people coming out here, which I don't think will, where are they going to park? There's no parking. We need to be able to have the right to vote on a compromise. There's already starting an influx of people. A homeless woman broke into my neighbor's house, was sleeping in her car in the garage. Another homeless man broke into the disabled neighbor that lives behind me. He was living in his downstairs bedroom. I had a homeless man, a drug addict, completely gone on drugs, sleeping in my driveway, and he almost got run over by my caregiver. The EMT came, he said, I'm not going to take you anywhere. I'm going to put you on the bus. So now the bus driver had to deal with it. So we need to be real about what this is going to be like. It's not going to be a Disney fantasy, people. It's going to be a very difficult situation for the people who live here and pay the taxes, that pays the executive salary for the Bike Coalition and the salaries for all these people on the Board of Supervisors who don't live out here and they don't understand what's going to happen. We need to have a voice. We need to be able to have a vote on a compromise.
Thank you, Patricia. And the final word goes to Lucas.
Yeah, and first, I really appreciate all the questions and everyone's attention to detail on this matter. In short, we have an incredible opportunity. We have one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and one of the most beautiful places in that city is our coastline. We have 1,200 miles of roadway. If we have traffic concerns, we have the ability to solve those on different streets. The city is already working on those. There's no other place to solve for coastal access and increasing people's enjoyment of the coast. By simply closing gates to cars and just opening the space to people and not even putting in a park bench, we created the city's third most visited park simply because people want to enjoy the coast. They're drawn to the ocean and they're drawn to enjoying it in a way that they can't do on the beach. And so long term, we have this incredible opportunity to give our next generation a world-class park that would be the envy of every city. And the question for us is just, what is the trade-off that we're willing to accept to do that? And then how can we problem solve that trade-off? And we've learned from 4.5 years of piloting this park in different ways, what that trade-off looks like and what possible solutions are. And I think this measure has taken those lessons and applied them in a way that really listens to both sides of people looking at the park opportunity, which is grand, and looking at the traffic impact, which the data demonstrates is small but real. And so we can solve those problems for the folks who need to get in and out of the city, and also give those same people a coastal park to enjoy with their whole family. So I appreciate everyone's time and really urge you to think about the scale of the opportunity relative to the scale of the challenges here.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody here because this has been a very civil and a very enlightening debate. And now, if you don't mind, we'll ask the proponents and opponents to leave the room so that SaveMuni members can discuss and if we care to take a position on this issue. So thank you again.